I'd like to speak to the young men for a minute today. There we go. Now, one of the things I think I'm the most passionate about in my entire life is discipleship of men, both in receiving discipleship from men who are a couple steps ahead of me in life and also giving it. There's guys that I'm 3 steps ahead of and who I have something good to offer. I have some discipleship that I can provide. And I think every man needs that. Every man needs a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy, a mentor, a bosom buddy, a best friend type of guy who can hear every concern, every pain of the heart that you have in your life, and somebody to give to, somebody that they can give back to. And without that, you're missing something. There's a lot of males in the world, but there's not a lot of men. There's not a lot of men who truly understand what it means to be a man and have grasped the weight of their role as God has designed it. And so, as much as I can, I want to share things that I think are valuable, skills that I think are valuable for men to know. And the one I'd like to talk about today is how to wash your wife. Now, the audience may be full of men who are not yet married, but this is a skill you may need one day. You may have a sister or a mom. This is a skill that would work well for them as well. Now, a few disclaimers. I am definitely not saying that I know everything about this subject. I am sharing the 3 steps that I've learned in marriage. In 7 years of marriage, this is the cumulative total of my wisdom, and it's really just somebody else's before mine, and it was somebody else's before theirs. So if it's not yet your wisdom, it's here for free for you today. So with that said, a few more disclaimers. 1, if you don't go to my church, then show this to your pastor. Don't just take this as spiritual advice if you don't know me personally. If you do go to my church, then maybe you want to watch this with your husband or your wife, or watch it with somebody else and discuss it. So the thing I'd like to do is I'd like to read the passage in Ephesians that deals with this subject and then bring a few points out of it. Verse 25, Ephesians 5, verse 25, husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she'd be holy and blameless. So husbands ought also to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself. So there's a few things that are worth saying about this text. Let's bring them out through an example. So if you're married, there'll be many times where a wife may come to a husband with some concern, some burden, and it's amazing that she came to you in the first place, because most men do not deal delicately with the burdens of their wives. Not easily, not naturally anyway. I think there's a lot of marriages, there's a lot of women whose primary go-to person for sharing the things of the heart is a girlfriend. It's a sister, it's a mom. And if you're a married woman, I don't think that should be your first stop. I think the first stop should be your husband. But with that said, this is a lost art. And so it absolutely is understandable, even though it is not ideal, why a woman would do this. So my wife might come to me with any number of concerns. The concern itself is not what's important. The fact that she's coming to me is because in her spirit, she wants to submit to me. The fact your wife is coming to you is a good sign. But the trick is not to screw it up. So the text says that Christ gave himself up for the church. Now, there's a lot of times that your wife may come to you and give you a concern or a burden, but it sounds like an accusation. And so most men get defensive, because one of the fleshly tendencies of a woman is to see the worst in her husband and to attach all her bad feelings to that man. Whether or not that's true, that may be completely true, and that's something to work out. It may not be true, and she's seeing him through a filter of some kind. She's seeing him through the filter of past experience and attaching her negative emotion to him. That's certainly possible as well. And it's a case-by-case basis. But it's very difficult for a man to humbly hear the concerns of his wife. Now, don't ask me why. Don't ask me specifically why. God designed it that way. Marriage is designed for the sanctification of the man and the woman. But normally, or maybe naturally, the man hears his wife's concern or burden as an accusation, and he personally is offended. And obviously, there are times where that may be the case. It may be about him. And it always is more difficult when the wife says it, because no one can hurt you like your wife, because she knows the most about you. It's easy to brush off the accusations or brush off the concerns of somebody who doesn't know you very well. But a wife will truly know the character of the husband. And so it stings a little more when it's true. At any rate, it takes high character to receive the concern of a wife without getting triggered as a man, because it's very difficult not to take it as a personal insult or a personal accusation. But like the text says, Christ gave himself up for the church. It is absolutely what is necessary in order to wash your wife. You must put aside the words themselves, because your goal is to draw out the heart of a woman. You're fortunate enough that she is approaching you with a desire to give you her heart. And this is something noble in women, that they will continuously submit to their husband, even though they may not feel safe in doing so, even though they've had the experience of the man dealing in a clumsy way with their heart. And yet they keep going. They give us a lot of chances, so that's good. And so it is the duty of the man to receive what feels like sometimes an accusation with a humble heart. It takes high character to wash your wife. And you need to change first. You need to, there's an act of spiritual leadership that occurs just in communication between husband and wife, when he can consider her needs and concerns higher than his own. If he's actually able to put aside the fact that he may feel attacked, then he can actually do the hard work of washing her. The analogy would be something like, yep, it feels like there's rain on my head. It feels like what's coming out of her mouth is getting me wet. My job is to put on a raincoat. When I put on a raincoat, I don't take it personally. And so the goal of the husband is to keep drawing out the heart of the wife. She's willing to give it to you. Your goal is to actually be able to take it. Don't screw up the conversation. Now, ways to screw up the conversation could look like fixing. It could look like offering a solution instead of just listening. Just asking questions like, how did you come to that conclusion? Why do you feel that way? How does that make you feel? Drawing out the emotion. Now, if you're able to do that successfully, an end to that conversation will occur. She'll reach a point where, if you're listening attentively enough, if you're validating her emotion, whether or not it feels to be true to you, irrespective of whether what she's saying is true, you are listening patiently, you're listening diligently, you're asking the correct questions. If you're doing all that, she'll come to an end and she will ask you some magic words. She'll ask you this magic sentence. Now, what do you think? Now, if you get to that point, this takes some calibration. You might not get it right the first time, but now she's ready for some truth. You were not having a truth-based conversation before that point. And if you listen attentively enough, attending to emotion, attending to the emotional reality of your wife, and not taking it personally, an end will come and she will ask you, what is your opinion? Usually you're in the clear to actually share what you believe is the truth about that situation. Now, usually what you share, hopefully, is edifying in the Lord. If you want to wash your wife with the word, that usually means that you're not just giving your opinion of what's true. She's going to ask you, what does Scripture say? The husband who wants to put money in his pocket, the husband that loves his body as himself, is going to listen attentively. And that's a little bit counterintuitive, because it means laying down his own desires and putting away his own flesh. The husband who is able to continuously draw the heart of his wife out will find eventually that he possesses the heart of his wife. There's nothing better than being your wife's first stop when she is burdened. That is exactly what happens with Christ and the church. We love Christ, we trust and respect him, and so we fly to him with our burdens. When we are burdened, in the midst of that burden, we go to him and we lay it down. That is the ideal position we want to find our wives in, willing to come to us. Whatever their concern is, they know that they have found a trusted source of comfort in their husband. And when you do that, you will only see a better and better marriage. The husband who has high character, the husband who can communicate well, the husband who can lay himself down will naturally find that his wife is more and more willing to be respectful to him, more and more willing to consider his feelings, his thoughts. It's an amazing thing that happens. The love and respect keep building and keep compounding. And so, if you personally are willing to work on yourself, if you're willing to work on your own character, you will see the spots, the blemishes, the wrinkles of your wife continuously fall away. You will wash your wife with the word. You will edify her in the Lord. Your marriage will grow stronger and her character will grow because your character grew. So there is no myth of neutrality that we can pursue here. Either your marriage is getting better or worse, and it rises or falls with the husband, with his patience, with his ability to communicate, with his growth in character. So hopefully that's an admonishment to men here, that your wife is begging for this from you and something amazing awaits you on the other side. It's money in your pocket when you're able to help your wife unburden. Now, usually to most men don't know what to do with that. Their wife comes to them with a burden, and they've been so stuck for their marriage, for the length of their marriage, that they just throw their hands up. They just give up and say, well, I don't know what to do with this, and so I'm not even going to try. And so their wife comes to them with a burden, and they're passive. And that's the worst thing you can possibly do. It only makes the situation worse. Makes your wife more bitter, more naggy. Her insecurities in life go up and not down. And that's absolutely not money in your pocket. That's the poison staying in the body. You want the poison to come out of the body. You actually want to wash her and present her as radiant. Your joy and her joy will increase in marriage if you're able to do that. If you want a really good marriage, you need to wash your wife with the water of the word. It is simple, but it's not easy. That's the best way to say it. It's worth practicing though. And so hopefully this has been enlightening, and I would love to know how you feel. If this has been a benefit to you, please like and subscribe. Please throw a comment in there. Hit the bell so you can get more notifications. This channel exists for the glory of God and not its own.